Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this regular planning board meeting on Tuesday, a little unusual, October 22nd of 2024. Can everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Madam Secretary, can you please read the Open Public Meetings Act and then take attendance?
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied with respect to this meeting of the Township of Verona Planning Board, which is being held in person in the ballroom of the Verona Community Center, located at 880 Bloomfield Avenue, Verona. The time and date of this meeting were included in the annual meeting notice posted in the community center and sent to the official newspapers of the township, the Verona Cedar Grove Times and the Star Ledger, at least 48 hours preceding the start time of this meeting. The agenda and instructions on how to comment will be provided at the appropriate time. All meetings are recorded. Those wishing to speak during any public comment period should only provide their name and municipality. Street addresses are not required. Please be advised that should a member of the public choose to state their street address, it will not be redacted from this recording. Mrs. Parker?
Present.
Mr. Ketza? Mr. Lilly?
Here.
Mr. Hyman?
Here.
Mr. Kamudi? Mr. Diol?
Here.
Councilman Roman? Deputy Manager O'Sullivan?
Here.
Mayor Tamboro?
Here.
Vice Chair Freshy?
Here.
Chairperson Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Massara?
Here.
And there is no engineer this evening.
Okay. Also joining is who will become very soon our new board secretary, Ms. Caitlin Kester. So welcome, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
And we're gaining another person, which is great. So thank you. Has everybody received a copy of the meeting minutes from Thursday, July 25th, 2024, and all of the resolutions that were passed that evening?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any corrections or comments on the minutes?
I move the minutes as presented.
If nobody else has any comments or corrections, then the minutes have been moved by the mayor. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Old. Everybody who votes yay on the minutes, please voice vote aye.
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 Are there any noes and any abstentions? Okay, meeting minutes pass. We also have a consistency determination. The next item is a few updates to our stormwater ordinance, and this is to determine that there are no inconsistencies with our master plan. By way of brief explanation, there was an entire section on solids and floatables that was inadvertently left out. It is sort of one of those sections that everybody knows that these things have to be done, but in order to be correct, we added it back in. As a result, many of the upper section numbers and some of the interior section references had to be tweaked in order to match up with the new sections insertion. And then there was just a couple of definitions added, and one or two points of clarification. I don't know, does anybody have any questions? Because these are very standard changes.
Yeah, were these changes from one of the model ordinances?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
so
first of all, the floatable section was from NJSC 7:8, period. Some of the tweaks like core forest, forest impaired water, including redevelopment, these were all from the Watershed Institute. Yes, they were just points of clarification that I think strengthened the ordinance and that were, again, inadvertently left out. And then, again, just reference updates that followed. Also, number 12, there is only one method now for determining, and calculating stormwater. And it said one of the following methods. It should be the following method. So very minor corrections that happened throughout. Any other questions I should ask? I find this entirely consistent, if not more so, than it was before.
Madam Chair, then it's not inconsistent.
Okay, it's not inconsistent. So I will happily make a motion to find that the updates to zoning code, chapter 150, article 25, are not inconsistent, can be found to be not inconsistent with our master plan. Can I get a second to that motion?
Second.
Mr. Fresky seconds. Can I get a voice vote, please?
Mrs. Parker?
You're allowed to vote.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we're missing two people.
Mr. Lilly?
Yes.
Mr. Hyman?
Aye.
Mr. Deal?
yes.
Deputy Manager O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Freshy?
Yes.
Chair Pearson?
Yes. The motion passes. And can we send a memo to Ms. Kiernan tomorrow, because they'll put it on their November 12th
We'll do it first thing.
agenda in order to pass on second reading. Thank you. Right now, I am going to open to public participation. Anything that anyone wants to talk about that's not on the application, that's not on the agenda. So if anybody from the public has anything that they want to discuss or ask questions about that is not on this evening's agenda, please come forward to the mic, state your name and your municipality, and seeing none, I'm going to close public participation and move on to, we have no resolutions, and we have a subcommittee update. I want to just open this with, last night's council meeting and this past Friday, they came out with the affordable housing numbers. Verona is at 173 for the next round. Not great news, but it is what it is. And I don't exactly know if the town is going to attempt to negotiate some of those. I would hope they would.
All options were.
Okay. But whatever the case, the township went ahead at their, not this past meeting, which was last night, but the meeting prior to that, and they hired a DMR planning group to do an element, the affordable housing element of the master plan that would be normal for us to oversee. The bid on that was $63,000, and it did not go out for an RFP. It was just sort of a choice that was made without our input. That said, we understand that this is a big deal for the township, and we need to get this done. I did speak with Mr. Heinman. I did speak with the mayor, and I did speak with Mr. O'Sullivan, because we all sit on the master plan subcommittee, and I just wanted everybody to be updated. And I think everybody agreed that we need to meet with these planners ASAP. Generally, we hold subcommittee meetings around 4 o'clock on Zoom. Is that amenable to everybody? Yes, yes? Jay, you're good? So is it possible for me to reach out to DMR and ask them, or do you want to be the go-between?
So we actually have our very first meeting internally tomorrow afternoon to discuss planning, milestones and schedules, and start presenting and figuring out what the right dates are for the subcommittee meetings, and how that schedule maps out for planning board discussions and back and forth with mayor and council as well. So we will begin discussions tomorrow. We will also then look to then schedule the subcommittee meetings immediately thereafter. So we will be coordinating. We'll have some correspondence after tomorrow afternoon's meeting on.
I know DMR doesn't know this, but we were very instrumental in drafting the master plan alongside with H2M. Yes, they would send a draft in, but we would, corrective data, we would massage some of the word usage, et cetera, et cetera. I want DMR to understand that we're a proactive subcommittee. We don't just sit back and let them take over. Besides which, the last time they did the affordable housing plan for us, or the housing plan, they had they had a lot of data in it that was from the DCA that was completely wrong. And it really upset me, because then when I asked him if they had read our new master plan, the answer was no.
They do understand that this assignment includes heavy involvement with both mayor and council and planning board, and specifically with the subcommittees as well. So they are aware that it will require a very circular discussion with both groups. Tomorrow's meeting, which kicks off, is actually with both DMR and H2M as well.
Okay, so we're ready. We're ready to sit down and ask. Jay, let me hand this over to you for a moment, because when I spoke with you on the phone, you had some very good input, and I'd like to know what your thoughts are on how to proceed with the schedule.
Yeah, I think my first question, Kevin, Mayor Tamburo, you don't have to answer this question. That's more for you guys to figure out if you're picking up something tomorrow. But the first thing that to figure out is, are we going to go with DCA's number? And I think Jess brought up a good point. Last go around, the DCA data that DMR relied on when they put together our housing plan wasn't entirely accurate. And if that data is not entirely accurate, there's a very strong basis for us to calculate our own number utilizing the formula that DCA provided. So I think that should be our first step tomorrow, to figure out what our target's going to be. And then from there, I think we definitely want to be involved in that process of, all right, well, with this housing loan, how do we actually achieve that goal of hitting these numbers? We decide what a reasonable number actually is, not just kind of relying on the blanket information that we got this last week. Especially given the fact that we know DCA's data for voting might not be accurate.
It definitely wasn't. And Tommy, I should say our construction code official, yeah, he worked side by side with somebody else in his office to actually glean the very corrective information. And the problem with the DCA's information is that every time somebody took down a garage or a pool or a shed or a deck, they count that as an entire single family or multiple family home demo. And so when we first received the data in our subcommittee meeting, we had something like 70 some odd houses were removed from Verona. And I was like, wait a minute, this is completely wrong. That same data was regenerated in DMR's first stab at the round 4 or round 3 housing element for us last year. So it's just, I can't tolerate that kind of data, erroneous data.
I think the strategy being discussed, not to disadvantage the township or the planning board on what we were looking to do moving forward, but I think the strategy being discussed tonight is in line with what we are intending to pursue and to discuss. We did have an initial preliminary meeting, even before the numbers were released over the summer. We had a meeting with both our affordable housing planner and the township planner to begin having these similar kinds of discussions in anticipation of what that number might be or what kind of adjustments we might look to try to review through the process. But again, I think it's part of the process that we kick off with tomorrow, and then we roll into subcommittee meetings as discussed tonight.
Okay.
And how was the decision made not to RFP?
There was an RFP.
There was actually, it's part of the professional services RFP that is.
Actually, no, the manager stated on the record during the meeting 2 weeks ago that there was no RFP.
There's an annual RFP for all professional services.
Okay, but not for that particular $63,000 contract.
Their professional services are on an annual basis, so we actually approved DMR as our affordable housing planner every year in the last couple of years. So there has been an RFP. It wasn't an RFP-less decision on that part. But they have been appointed, I believe, every year.
Yes.
As our affordable housing planner.
So there was an RFP on the plan, but that
There's
was.
a separate RFP on the affordable housing planner. So the resolution that was passed at the last meeting was to authorize the contract for this work, but they are still our designated. They were previously still our designated affordable housing planner. So that didn't change. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. My computer's not working. What were you going to say there?
You had to go old school, go
I
paper.
am. All right, well, I guess, Kevin, when can we expect to be contacted on a potential schedule? Because everybody's going to have to coordinate their schedules to get on the same page.
We'll look to schedule something, if not by the end of the day tomorrow, by Thursday. Well, the meeting will be, I'm not sure exactly the timing of tomorrow, but it's later in the afternoon, so if we don't follow up with the proposed schedule at the end of the day, it will be the following day. So it'll be this week.
All right, so would you be able to email, if nothing else, myself and Kathleen and Caitlin?
Yes.
And I can get it out to
Yes,
Jay and the mayor and Greg.
yes.
Okay. So moving, what are you laughing at? Yes, you have to be there. And, for purposes of consistency, I think we'd be perfectly fine if Sam was there as well, since she was the author of the master plan, just to make sure that we're not running afoul of the correct numbers. All right. We're moving along, if everybody is satisfied. New business, case 2024-01, 176 Grove Avenue, block 1403, lot 90. The applicant proposes to subdivide the property located at 176 Grove Avenue, block 1403, lot 90, into 2 lots. The existing multiple family dwelling will be retained, and the subdivided lot will be developed, potentially will be developed with a new single-family dwelling. Welcome, Mr. Tremulak.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Ms. Parker's new and isn't fully familiar with the procedure of the board. Ms. Parker, I believe you're going to recuse yourself because you reside within 200 feet of the property?
Yes, I'm recusing myself from this matter as an adjoining property owner.
Mr. Parker, you need to...
Show it there?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So again, good evening, Madam Chair. It's nice to see you, members of the board. Alan Tremulak appearing on behalf of the applicants, John and Michelle Lampkin. This is a minor subdivision application involving property located at 176 Grove Avenue. It's block 1403, lot 90 on the township tax maps. This property is an exceptionally large lot located in your R60 zoning district. Property contains almost 42,000 square feet of lot area, which is just shy of an acre of property. The minimum required lot size in the R60 zoning district is only 7,200 square feet. So this property is almost 6 times larger than the minimum lot area required under the ordinance. The property is 100 feet wide and over 400 feet deep. So it's a long, narrow property, but encompassing almost an acre of land. We're seeking to subdivide the property into 2 lots. The proposed new lot would be a flag lot with 20 feet of frontage along Grove Avenue, leading to a much larger area in the rear of the property where a new house could be built, provided the board approves this application and grants the subdivision. If approved, the 2 new lots would be 16,300 square feet and 25,457 square feet, still substantially larger than the 7,200 square foot minimum required in this zoning district. In addition to site plan approval, we've applied for 2 variances. We need a lot width variance, again, because of the flag lot. The ordinance requires a 60-foot lot width, and the lot width is measured at the street line. And at the street line, we're only 20 feet, but when we get to the rear of the property, it's really a 100-foot wide lot. But it is a variance for a lot width for the staff of the flag, if you will, to allow 20 feet, whereas 60 feet is required. There's a second variance. It's really a de minimis variance for impervious lot coverage. The ordinance allows for a maximum of 40% coverage. One of our proposed lots has 41%, slightly over the 40% maximum. I think this is a de minimis variance, but I can tell you right now that if the board is not comfortable with granting that variance, we can make some revisions to reduce the coverage to be within the 40% requirement, specifically by removing a shed on the property largely, which would get us to that number. So it's primarily really the lot width variance that's at the heart of the case. I just want to also note an interesting feature here. As you'll see from the exhibits that our planner prepared, my client's property, as well as the property directly to the south, 170, are very similarly sized properties, long and narrow lots. Our neighbor's property, interestingly, has 3 houses on the property. It's not subdivided, it's all one lot, but has 3 principal structures, which is unusual. It's really not permitted under zoning, but it's a legal nonconformity. And again, that's the property immediately to the south of this property. We're not asking for 3 houses, we'd just like 2 on 2 separate subdivided lots. So having said that, I have 2 witnesses to present this evening. I'm going to have some very brief testimony from my client, Mr. Lampkin, followed by testimony from our professional planner, Matt Flynn. So unless the board has any preliminary questions for me, I'd ask that Mr. Lampkin be sworn.
Mr. Lincoln, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
No.
Whatever makes you comfortable.
John Lampkin. I reside at 4 Shawnee Road in Short Hills.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Lampkin, you're one of the owners of 176 Grove Avenue?
Correct.
Okay. When did you purchase that property?
In June of 22.
And you own that together with your wife? Is that
Correct.
right? Okay. Property contains an existing two-family dwelling, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you live at the property?
No, not
Okay.
correct.
So this is a rental property?
Correct.
Investment property, if you will?
Correct.
All right. And we filed this application, and we're before the board tonight because you're asking for permission to subdivide the property, right?
Correct.
All right, can you just tell the board, if the application is approved, what are your plans, or what are your intentions with respect to the newly subdivided lot?
I mean, right now, we don't have like a definitive plan. We just became empty nesters, so we're trying to figure a lot of things out. So I saw what my neighbor's doing next door, and he's built this beautiful house. So we had a tree situation that I was kind enough to remove some trees so he could do his construction. And then I just asked him, I said, how'd you do this? And he's like, oh, I go for a subdivision or something. And then that kind of put it in my ear. And then as I've seen how beautiful, I mean, this house is enormous, and I didn't even think that we were going to build something that big if we did. But that kind of gave me the idea, and then I was referred to a few different attorneys, and here we are today.
So do you expect to retain ownership of the subdivided lot and build a house, or would you sell the property, or don't you know?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, okay, one or the other.
One of the two, yeah.
Okay. Will any trees need to be removed in order to accommodate construction of a new house in the rear of your
Yeah, there's
property?
one tree that's pretty much like in the middle of the property. It's more like to the left of the garage, and that's like the only tree that would probably have to come down.
Okay.
Is it on this?
I don't think the trees are depicted on the subdivision plan.
It's not a huge tree. It's probably 20 feet high, maybe.
Sir, you just said that you removed a bunch of trees on behalf of your neighbor. Where?
No, that's how I met my neighbor. Because what happened was, when he was doing his construction, he noticed there were some dead trees. So I reached out to the township, went through all the proper channels, asked them what the process was to remove a tree. They had the forest person come by, tell me all the trees that were required to come down because they were dead. And I did everything that the town asked me to do.
Where is the tree located that you would want to take down, and what kind of size tree is it?
I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure what document you're looking at.
I'm looking at the survey that you sent in.
Yeah, the tree is adjacent. It's probably about 20, 30 feet from the garage. And it's not a huge tree. It's like
It's a beautiful tree.
It's a beautiful tree, but yeah. I plan another one going. I mean,
Well, you would have to.
You would have to.
understand.
Yeah.
Since you've got familiarity with the town tree removal ordinance. And you understand that if you were to remove any tree from the property, you would have to comply with the ordinance.
Correct.
And you intend to?
Like 100%.
Okay. And it would probably only be that one tree that's in the center. And I think our next witness has an exhibit where you might be able to see the tree we're talking about. But it's one tree.
So, are you aware about the rear of your property?
The rear of the property? There's a lot of trees back there. And
I apologize. It's my 93-year-old aunt. The rear of the property is listed as a rank 3 for endangered species in the state of New Jersey. All those that treed area
In the rear.
Yes,
None of those trees would be removed.
not one.
Not one of
Not
those
one.
trees.
There will be no disturbance in the rear
No,
portion of the
Just so
property.
you know, the trees there's only one tree that has to come down, it's like right by the driveway. It's to the left of the driveway. It's not all those trees in the back. None of those have to come down.
So
could
you
put
do have somewhat of a plan for a house.
Well, I just saw my, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm seeing what's being done next door. And I'm like, you could put a house like the same size and you'd only have to remove one tree. I mean, you might be able to keep the tree if you made the house thinner, but I mean, I don't have plans yet.
But you do have
Just
plans to put a
just
driveway in.
Address that. I mean, we are allowed to remove trees in compliance with your ordinance, and we're only talking about one tree, not any of the trees in the rear of the property, which are the ones that you seem to be concerned about. It's just the one there's no way to build a house without removing this one tree that's sort of, centrally located in the rear.
It could be a front lawn tree to the house that goes behind the other house. But anyway. Any
You're
other
just here for the
questions?
subdivision though, right? You're not.
Yeah, all I have is
You're
the
not-
subdivision.
So you'd still, like, even if we gave you the subdivision, if you couldn't knock down those trees, like, we're not approving you to remove any trees at this point, right? You're not asking for that? Okay.
We're not asking for, anything from this board except for the subdivision.
Well, you're asking for two variances.
One, really, but.
Well, it's actually two really,
It's
but
true, but I told you, it's wrong. Concerned about the extra 1% of coverage. We will revise, we'll eliminate the shed and do whatever to bring it below.
okay. Anyone else from the board? Go ahead, sir.
I just have a question. The survey that you showed, the rear of the property, there seems like on the survey, there's a hashed out area that leaves a gap between the rear of your property line and the lots 72 and 73 behind it. Can you explain what that is?
I can explain it. That's a legal issue. That's identified as a gore. And a gore is an area that through the years somehow got left off of a deed. So there's not it's not definitive as to who the owner of that is.
It's called a gore,
A gore, yeah.
that I learned today.
Yep, we all learned something. And that actually exists, the gore exists where the endangered species area is,
Nobody owns it.
but it's not an easement. It's just
No,
like
it's-
no
it's-
man's land.
It's, somebody owns it, but through the years, it was left, that piece was left off of deeds somehow. What the survey shows is there's a filed map description, which probably, a filed map is it's a map like a survey map, an engineer prepares it, that's then filed as the map, as opposed to a meets and bounds description that is prepared by the surveyor or the title company. The meets and bounds description did not match the filed map description. Now, normally, this isn't something that happened last year, last decade, because then it would be easily cured. You could go back and find the people. So my guess is it was 100 years ago, at least, this happened. So. And for the record, Madam Chair, the applicant is using
The inside line.
the inside
Yes.
line, the lesser, for the conservative line.
Right. And also just a little detail on some of the testimony that actually, I guess, Mr. Tremulak gave. The house, the property next door was in existence for about 100 years with 3 principal uses on it. So I just want to put that on the record that 3 principal uses on a piece of property that existed before Verona even had a zoning code.
And maybe, I'm
Okay.
not
Just-
questioning, it's totally legal. It's just, I think it's important to note that there are
Right,
multiple
but-
structures on a similarly sized property next door. in terms of whether we're doing anything that might be inconsistent or out of character with the neighborhood, I think that's a relevant consideration, even before you look at the unusual size of this property compared to other lots in this neighborhood, which are significantly smaller.
Oh, my God. My computer's messed up, so I'm sorry. Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Okay. Our next witness, you can, is Matt Flynn.
Good evening. Mr. Flynn, state your name and business address for the record, please.
Matthew Flynn, Flynn, business address is 101 Gibraltar Drive, Morris Plains, New Jersey, employed by John McDonough Associates.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give this evening is the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Matt, have a seat, unless you'd prefer to stand. Why don't you start by giving the board the benefit of your educational background and your professional qualifications?
Sure. So my education comes from Rutgers. I have my master's degree in planning and public policy. I have my professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as my national licensure, which is the AICP license. This is my first time before this board. However, I have been before over 100 boards across the state, and both licenses are in good standing.
And you already indicated you're associated with John McDonough's office.
That's correct.
Professional planner, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. The board accepts his qualifications as a professional planner. Thank you. Matt, you've reviewed the subdivision application for this property as well as the subdivision plan prepared by Michael Pronesti.
I have.
Okay. And I know you've prepared, I'd like you to review the plan and discuss the variances, but before we do that, I'm going to hand out the two-page exhibit that you've prepared. And then you can...
Sure.
This A1?
For benefit of the record, Exhibit A1 is going to be a two-page exhibit showing the property and the surrounding area.
Is there a title on the block, a title block, or somehow we can identify?
Yeah, we can call it Planning Exhibits for Jonathan Lampkin. Before I jump into this exhibit, just by way of quick background, I know that council did a good job at introducing the case. Again, this is a substantially oversized lot, just under an acre at 41,760 square feet. Only 7,200 square feet is required per zoning. So as it is now, this is a lot that's over 5 times greater than the zoning requirements. And I think we can see clearly on sheet 1 of my exhibit here that most of these lots are substantially smaller, substantially more in conformance with the dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance. And here we're looking at a lot that is clearly out of context with what the zoning it considers. As was mentioned, we are proposing 2 new tax lots, one being lot 90.01 at 16,303 square feet, still over double the zoning minimum in terms of lot area, and the other at 90.02, lot 90.02 at 25,457 square feet. That lot would be over 3 times the zoning minimum. So even though we are proposing a subdivision application, we're requesting 2 variances here. We're actually not proposing any undersized lots. And again, that's by virtue of the fact that we do have this substantially large property to begin with. Also, by way of background, in terms of zoning, this is the R60 zone, and single family is a permitted use in the zone. So again, we're not requesting a use variance here. Importantly, due to the large, generous lot proportions here, we're also not requesting a density variance. Again, we're talking about 2 substantially oversized lots. So if I could just bring the board's attention to sheet 1 now, I've highlighted the property in question in this bold yellow line. And then I've done a hashed yellow line over where the proposed interior lot line would be to separate the two
newly proposed lots. Again, like I mentioned, we are talking about a substantially oversized lot in the context of zoning. I would say not only are we talking about a unique specific lot, we're actually talking about a unique specific set of lots. So if you look here, you have, I would say, a pretty uniform, I could use the term cookie cutter, lot patterns along Linwood Road, along Dodd Terrace, Sampson Drive, the other side of Grove Avenue. And then here we're in this sort of intermediary location between Dodd Terrace and Linwood Road, where that prevailing lot size actually breaks up, and we're left with some very large lots. When council mentioned that we do have this adjacent lot 91 next to us that has the 3 existing residential principal buildings, it is true that those are legally existing. I think the important thing to note, not only the fact that we are going to match up to that in terms of land use, but I would also note that it sort of brings to mind that what we're proposing is sort of the logical development of a lot of this size. When we look at what an appropriate development is on a uniquely shaped and sized lot, we look to other uniquely sized and shaped lots that are similar and see what they're doing and whether it works or not. In this case, we do have the benefit of that lot being directly next door. And I think in terms of the intensity of the land use, like council mentioned, we're proposing 2 principal structures, not the 3 that's next door. So I think, again, in terms of compatibility, in terms of the appropriateness of what we're proposing, the proof of that is right there. I think also, while I'm on this sheet 1 here, if we look at adjacent lot 87, which is another larger lot, you could almost call that a flag lot, but I won't. That lot is very large, and there's actually a large undeveloped area on that property that's adjacent to our property. So in terms of light, air, open space, conceivably, if and when a dwelling is developed on our newly created lot there, it's not going to be directly in between 2 dwellings. It's not going to have that crammed-in effect that we try to avoid with the zoning controls. It's actually going to, I think, fit in quite nicely in the context of the openness that we have in that area. With that, I think I'll shift over to sheet 2 now. Essentially just showing the board a drone shot that we took earlier today, showing the subject site. I have some arrows here denoting the existing dwellings on the adjacent lot. They do have, that property does have a private roadway or private driveway or private access way, whatever you want to call it, providing access to those homes, which are all oriented towards that private access way. I think the board can see the tree that was in question. I think it's right in the middle of this existing rear yard on our property. Obviously, we're not proposing a tree removal variance at this time. If and when that does happen, the appropriate approvals would need to be acquired in order for that tree to go. But again, the board does have the benefit of seeing what we're talking about on sheet 2. I think with that, just to jump into the statutory criteria, again, in terms of C relief, we're requesting the main one is the lot width variance, 20 feet of lot width for our newly created lot, which is that stem of the flag, so to speak, whereas 60 feet is the requirement, and lot coverage, 41% is for the existing dwelling, the lot that the existing dwelling is situated on, whereas 40% is the maximum requirement. So just over that requirement at 1%, I'm sure that something could be done to reduce that if the board does have concerns about that. But again, it's pretty much right on point with what the zoning requires, 41 versus 40%. And I think that really speaks to the fact that we are sort of making this lot more in keeping with what the zoning anticipates here, providing a lot coverage that's much more in line with what the zoning requires. So just to tie all of that into the statutory criteria, like I said, I think we can look to the C2 balancing test, whereby the benefits of the application as a whole substantially outweigh any detriments. The Pullen case does tell us that we need not look at the benefits of each individual variance. we can look at the application as a whole and assess the benefits stemming from same. So we look to the municipal land use law, the purposes of zoning that are set forth therein. Purpose A, promotion of the general welfare. When we talk about providing something that's more in keeping with the rules and regulations of zoning, again, here we're talking about a substantially oversized lot that could be conducive at some time in the future to a substantially oversized home. Obviously, what we see in the general area on sheet 1 here, not only do we see substantially smaller lots, but we do see a general uniformity in terms of building sizes. When you have a lot that's 6 times the lot area that's required, you could conceivably get a much larger home, which would be not in keeping with what the zone plan is really trying to achieve here. So I think by bringing that lot area down on both of our newly created lots, you're creating better uniformity, not only with the neighborhood, but also with the zoning. Purpose G of the municipal land use law, variety of uses in appropriate locations. When we look at an area of this size, and again, I'm going to discount the actual shape of it just for a second, the fact that we don't have conforming lot width, but when we talk about an area of this size, the zoning anticipates many more homes to be situated thereon. So again, we don't have the lot width, so technically you would obviously need the variance that we're requesting. But again, in terms of light, air, open space, you could conceivably fill up an area of this size with much greater massing, whether it's 1 building, 2 buildings, a much larger home, whatever the case may be. So in terms of variety of uses in appropriate locations, again, I think that what we're proposing here is appropriate given what we have. Again, if we look at adjacent lot 91, which does have similar size and shape, there are 3 principal buildings on 1 lot, which again, I think speaks to the logic of what we're proposing here. It speaks to the fact that, again, we're not proposing, I think if we were proposing this and we had this uniformity of lot size and shape like you see along Dodd Terrace, Linwood Road, the opposite side of Grove, and we were proposing what we are right in the middle of one of those prevailing lot patterns, I would have a totally different planning conclusion. But again, the reality is that we do have this right next door, so we're not breaking up this established pattern that we see elsewhere in the neighborhood. Purpose I, desirable visual environment. I think I spoke to neighborhood compatibility. This is not only a unique property, it's a unique set of properties. The same arrangement exists right next door. We do have the benefit of having this oversized, somewhat of a flag lot next door on lot 87, which does provide even greater light, air, open space. Purpose M, efficient use of land. This is infill development. It's not sprawl. It's taking advantage of existing underutilized space on a substantially, almost 6 times greater minimum required lot area, which does reduce the need to sprawl outward to fill a missing demand for housing. So I think we are taking advantage of a good opportunity on this particular property. All of that goes towards the positive criteria, what makes this a good application, what are the benefits of this application. The flip side to that is the negative criteria. I believe there's no substantial detriment to the public or to the zone. I think we need to look at why we have these requirements in the first place. What are we trying to avoid? What are we trying to achieve with these requirements? I would say the primary purpose behind a lot width requirement is to avoid this crammed-in effect, having buildings right up against or in between 2 other buildings with little building-to-building separation. Here, one benefit of our application is that we're actually not changing the building-to-building separation along Grove Avenue by utilizing this portion as what I'm calling the stem of the flag or the pole of the flag. You're actually keeping that building-to-building separation that we have now. We're not going to have a building that appears crammed in. It's actually going to have really no impact to the streetscape whatsoever. I would say another purpose behind lot width requirements is what I keep saying, light, air, open space. By having a property that conforms with the dimensional requirements of lot size, lot width, lot depth, you're basically allowing a development to take place that complies with setbacks and to have proper distances between our adjacent properties. Here, I think that's going to be furthered. Again, we're talking about a lot that in terms of area alone, you could have over 5 properties, over 5 lots. In terms of why we may not see flag lots all over the place, why in certain instances we're not going out of our way to provide flag lots all over the place, I think there's really 3 key reasons why boards would look to avoid flag lots. One being access. If you have what I'm calling the pole of the flag that's too narrow or too close to 2 buildings, it might not be great for safe and efficient access. In this case, we have 20 feet there, so I think that's clearly enough for access in and out of that newly created lot. Another issue is privacy. Again, we're talking about a huge lot. We're not talking about 2 lots that are just conforming in terms of lot size. We're talking about one that's double the lot area and one that's triple the lot area. I think that a new dwelling could conceivably be constructed on that lot in the back without necessitating any variance relief. Again, we're not requesting a dwelling at this point, but again, in terms of the dimensions of that area in the back, it could be done without requiring variance relief.
Wait, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so in terms of privacy, one potential issue of a flag lot would be, obviously, you're putting a home behind another home. In this case, we have so much lot area that it's really not going to stand out as being crammed in. Whereas if you had a lot that was maybe right at that requirement of being double the minimum lot area of about 14,000, you would have 2 much smaller lots. You'd have much greater or much less space between these 2 lots, and so it would appear more dense. And then finally, I think another thing we should look at in terms of flag lot developments is neighborhood character. And again, I think we can look at that prevailing context along some of these other roadways. And I think it's pretty clear that we're not breaking up any established lot pattern that we see elsewhere. I'm still on negative criteria. Again, no impact to the streetscape. This isn't really going to be visible from the street. The key here, again, is that we're not requesting a use variance. We're not requesting a density variance. We have 2 substantially oversized lots that we're proposing here. To speak to the master plan briefly, the master plan does speak in various pages that one of the goals is to not disrupt prevailing neighborhood patterns. And again, I think this is not something that's being located or breaking up an established pattern. It's actually complementing what's right next door. I know I've been before enough boards to know that we don't like to be the first to give out a variance. And so I did see other flag lots in Verona. Just to put it on the record, I saw one at 58 Chestnut Road. I saw a flag lot located at 55 Grove Avenue, which is a similar arrangement with 1 dwelling in the front and another dwelling in the back. Again, just to throw it out there, there's a couple out there in the town. This isn't going to be the first. And I think really the crux of the application is this is a unique set of conditions that warrant the flag lot development. It's not doing it, so to speak, for frivolous reasons. So with that, I think in conclusion, this is a very appropriate development. Again, given the property itself, given the surrounding area, given the generous lot proportions, and I think approval would be warranted and granted based on the fact that there would be no substantial detriment to the public or to the zone. Despite the variance for lot width, we're really not going to see something that stands out as a zoning variance. This is a unique piece of property. So with that, unless there's any redirect, that's pretty much what I have.
That's all.
I'm not going anywhere.
No further questions
From you.
from me. I'm sure you have some.
Yes, Mayor.
I have a couple. You were discussing access before, and I'm looking at your page 1 of this nice document here. I'd also like to borrow your drone at some point, but let's say you were to put a single-family residence behind this in the back, which would be, let's say they were to put a single-family residence behind this.
Mm-hmm.
What would the access plan be? Right now, the stem of your flag runs adjacent to the driveway for the existing structure. Would the proposal be to run an adjacent parallel driveway? Or would you be proposing to share driveway access with the front residence?
Obviously, there are no plans at this point
Because-
on paper.
But I'd like to hear, this is a supposal to you.
Honestly, I can't really speak to the fact that we don't have plans for that, but conceivably, because we're splitting the lot, is your question whether we would have a shared driveway arrangement?
Would you have a shared driveway?
No, the answer to that would be no, and that's kind of built into
So,
the fact that we have that. flat.
Let's
We have
refer
two
to the next page.
Yeah.
All right. I am looking at the drawings here, and assuming you don't have a shared driveway, the driveway would have to be on that 20 feet frontage to Grove Avenue, correct?
Correct, yes.
There is an additional tree there. There appear to be a couple structures that would have to be removed. There are several trees, actually, that would have to be removed to accommodate a parallel driveway. So I think it was disingenuous to suggest that only one tree would need to be removed for this project when there are several that would be in the path of that driveway. So that's one concern I have. The reason number one, the trees are certainly a concern, as we have a major problem in this town as far as where our water goes when it rains, but it looks to be several trees that would be there. Secondly, one of the reasons, of course, we don't have flag lots is for emergency services access. Firehouse, which is adjacent to this building, our fire trucks are very large. I wouldn't see very easily how, unless you were to put in an oversized driveway that would take almost the entire width of that frontage, that we could easily access a ladder truck to the back of that area, especially if you put any permanent demarcation between the existing driveway, which is also not accessible to fire trucks to get in the back because of the fence and the tree and so on. But having a structure back there would significantly impair the fire department's ability to use a ladder truck to access anything back there as well. Was that thought considered? I'm sorry, you're talking while
I think I would respectfully disagree, Mayor. I mean, we could make the driveway 20 feet wide, and we would make it as wide as the fire department wants to make sure. I mean, obviously, we want fire and emergency vehicle access to the rear, and I think 20 feet, which is what we have, is more than enough, but we would defer to the fire.
Well, your 20 feet is your entire frontage, right? That would be the entire frontage. And that's almost what you'd have to do,
I don't think that's legal.
No, your driveway can't be that large under our existing zoning code.
What?
20 foot wide.
1 foot from the property line.
Okay.
But regardless, I think that I do have that is my primary concern. That's why we don't like flag lots. I came from a town that there were several flag lots due to its rural nature that presented some pretty significant issues. We do have a limited number, and I do note, just for the record, that there are a couple other than the places that the planner mentioned.
Yeah. I think one solution that I'm just thinking is, assuming that tree was gone right in the front, and again, I'm going to try to address both questions, the first being the tree removal. Again, the generous proportions of this lot, whatever trees would need to be removed, there's adequate space to provide the replacement of any trees. I'm confident of that. Secondly, to the point of emergency access, I'm sure there's a way, and I'll defer to council, if that tree right in the front was removed, we could come up with a emergency access easement that would allow, and the property owner on the existing lot would have to agree to the emergency.
That would certainly be easy.
Well, he's here now, so.
It's the same owner.
Yeah.
That's why I said that would be easy.
Oh, I thought it was sarcasm. The truck would basically be able to use both driveways, is the point. And again, we're not talking about a substantial distance, so I think in this instance, that would be an appropriate solution, personally.
So I can tell you, my concern is that should we approve that the subdivision, that the property owner would have relative flexibility to build what they want and to not consider these items when it comes time to building. So I have a concern with approving a subdivision at this time without really having a plan for what's going to be the next step.
There could be conditions.
Okay.
Even though there is not a site plan right now, there could be restrictions on what the applicant would be allowed to do, such as you have to get the easement.
So we could have affirmative
Absolutely,
requirements.
absolutely.
And I'd also go further than that. I wouldn't have any problem, my clients wouldn't have any problem if you posed a condition that, this is subject to approval by the fire department to ensure that there's adequate emergency vehicle access to the rear. We want that.
Well, I would hope so.
May I just chime in on what Chris suggested and what you guys seem grossly amenable to? Right now, your driveway length, just to the end of the back of the proposed front lot, is 216 feet. And normally a driveway, is that about right, 216? 216.22, is that correct? Yes?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were,
I'm asking for confirmation, please.
yeah, I understand. Where does it say that? Oh, here it is. Correct, 216.
Okay,
216.
and then a driveway is generally 10 foot wide, without the fluffing it up for the fire
Generally,
department. Yay?
yes.
Okay,
I think that's,
so that's, before you even reach the rear lot, you've already added, just to get there, 2,100 plus square feet of new impervious surface. I want to also say that I'm sure with what this gentleman has said on the record about putting a big house, although we don't have plans and you don't know what he's going to do, but you kind of went off on this tangent about putting a bigger lot, a bigger house there because bigger house would work and but I don't really know what you're talking about because you said we don't have any plans.
I don't think he said.
So, wait,
I'm not going to speak for Mr.
please
Yeah.
don't.
well, first, let me go back to your first point about the impervious coverage.
Wait, because we have a stormwater management ordinance for minor
course.
developments, and it's already triggered just to get to the back lot,
Sure.
It-
Okay, wait.
right? Anything over 400 square feet of new impervious surface, which would be your driveway, big time, you would need to mitigate. But I mean, you're going to probably be a major development, and I just want to say that in this back area that has been mapped out by the DEP, you can't put any of your stormwater mitigation in that area because it's an area that fosters endangered species or it's environmentally sensitive.
We wouldn't. We're,
Okay, but you don't know where you're going to have room to put anything.
can I just make two comments?
Sure.
First of all, the engineer, we have a report from the township engineer.
Yeah.
He made nothing about stormwater.
But I'm telling you, we have an ordinance.
And I understand that. Can I answer the question? Or?
Yeah, I just don't point to, because you didn't hand plans in, but you're talking about them this evening.
Talking about what this evening?
Your plans.
The only plan we're talking about is a subdivision.
No, he was talking about the size of the house, and now you're talking about the width of the driveway. So I'm getting into it.
Okay, let me just, with respect to stormwater
Mhm.
and any other ordinances that are applicable here, we have to comply with those. We have to comply. when we go in
I've
for a
heard this so many
building permit.
times.
And can I just answer,
Yep.
please, respectfully? You know, we have to satisfy the township engineer. We have to provide grading and drainage plans. If there's stormwater required, we're going to have to meet the stormwater requirements and submit detailed plans that would have to be reviewed and approved by your professionals, particularly your engineer and maybe your construction official, to make sure we're in compliance. We have to comply, with all ordinances, the tree ordinance, stormwater, anything else that might.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, if it turns out for some unlikely reason that that lot is undevelopable, that's the property owner's risk. I mean, that it wouldn't be developed not according to the rules that need to be followed. I wanted to address your point about impervious. If you're accurate that it's 2,100 square feet, but again, I haven't done that math. For the driveway, you're talking about 5% impervious. You're allowed to go up to 40%. That leaves you with 30. Okay, that's fine. I'm just letting you know that you have up to 40% allowed for this zone. A driveway of that size, like you're referring to, would only take up 5% of that. You would still be left with an adequate amount for a home.
So I'm just going to cite chapter and verse. Please look at chapter 150.
Which 150 what?
25. And you could look at 7 and 9, section 25.7 and 25.9. That's the minor development. But you guys are probably going to be looking at a major development, which is anything above 5,000 square feet of new impervious surface. That is a major development in the township of Verona, so I just want to let you know with that, you have to mitigate stormwater with green infrastructure. So you would need room on your site to do that, and it wouldn't be able to be behind the house because that's an upward trajectory.
So if I could quote this section you're talking about quickly, it
You
says
can quote it.
For each square foot of increased impervious surface.
Say that again?
For each square foot of increased impervious surface, and then it gets into the stormwater requirements. My interpretation of that, and I'll defer to the board engineer, would be increased over the requirement. If I'm wrong, but I'm just.
Increased over 400 square
Increase is
feet.
new.
Okay, I stand corrected. Okay.
Again, whatever it is, and we have to comply, and we will comply. If we can't comply, then guess what? We can't build a house back there. We have to comply with every one of your township ordinances and satisfy your engineer on stormwater in particular.
So I have a question along that same vein, but with respect to the flag lot and the lot width variance that is really the main variance here. Since you said that you could reduce this pretty large driveway and pad on the existing lot to get you under, right, for impervious. So putting that aside, putting stormwater issues aside for the site that hasn't been designed yet, could you eliminate the need for the flag lot variance by instead implementing a private right-of-way along that 20, or actually, I think it would have to be 22-foot area, and then either having a cul-de-sac or wrapping it so that you would have adequate frontage on that rear lot? From a planning perspective, I don't want to talk about the technical feasibility.
Yeah, I think.
From a planning perspective, does this become an as-of-right subdivision if you just designed it with a private right-of-way?
I wouldn't call it as of right, so you would need relief from a section, this is a variance that comes from the municipal land use law, not the zoning code, section 35, which is, you're now, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're now providing a lot that doesn't have frontage along the roadway. And the justification for that actually comes from the following section, section 36, which is actually somewhat less discretionary because it simply states that provided that the lot has adequate emergency access, then it's justified. So it's, again, seeing that if emergency access is the concern here, I think, again, we are talking about an area that works for emergency access. Again, it wouldn't be a C variance, it would be a variance that is simply justified based on the adequacy of that emergency access, which, I mean, I'm sure we would be amenable to that. I personally think it's, well.
We talked about that as an option, to just draw the lot line, in the rear there, which would make it conform with lot width requirement. It just triggers this deviation by not having frontage on the street, but that's easily satisfied because it's not uncommon to have a a right-of-way or an easement or it's really a driveway, that would be set up by easement documents that would allow for access to the rear lot. We could do it that way. It gets us, it's one of those things that you wouldn't know by looking at the property. You'd see a driveway, you wouldn't know where the lot lines are. You'd see something similar to what we're proposing with a driveway leading to the rear lot, or it could be a common driveway.
Yeah, I was thinking more of something like two-way, right-of-way, and then you could eliminate the existing asphalt driveway, so you don't go from one curb cut to two curb cuts.
We'd have no
And then
problem.
you'd have better circulation for deliveries, emergency vehicles, things like that. Again, cost not being a consideration, you could also take care of your stormwater management that way with impervious pavers or something like that.
Yeah. We'd have no problem with that.
I have a question for Mr. Macera. Is it appropriate to ask to see, like, on the proposed plans, like where the trees are and, maybe a better idea of where the driveway would go in consideration of this?
I mean, you can ask. There's no requirement of the applicant to show that, because again, I think that's what they're trying to discuss, the possibilities. This is a subdivision, it's not, there's no building footprint for any proposed house. It doesn't show the maximum in which they would have to build. So, I mean, if the applicant wants to answer those questions, they can, but they're not obligated to, and it's not, part of what has been presented or, part of the decision making.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of reference made to the houses in the area. Do you have any idea which direction you're going to be facing this house?
No,
You don't?
I do not know.
Okay, you don't. Okay. Well, you don't, but maybe the owner does. Maybe the owner of the property does. Here's the bottom line. I messed up before, Mr. Tremulak. I did not open to the public to allow the public to ask the owner questions. So
No, he's
that's,
here so they can.
right. So we can revisit that in a few minutes to allow the public. At this point, does anybody have any further questions for the planner? I think Jay is working on something here.
No, I'm just looking at
Okay.
that.
I think I can answer the last question on behalf of, I don't know if my client corrects me, that any house built in the rear the front would face towards Grove Avenue. You're not going to have it face towards the sides, or certainly not to the rear. The front would, similar to the house on the property next door.
So you're saying the front of the house will face the backyard of the house in front of it?
Right, just like the house next door on 170 Grove.
Right. Which sets no precedent, so
It's no precedent, it's there, it works.
I'm just,
Would you
It's
want it to
not-
face somewhere else?
it wasn't granted
Okay.
a subdivision,
I would just draw a difference respectfully between precedent and compatibility. Just because it's there, we're not saying that we deserve it because it's there, but there is a compatibility element. That's all.
Does anybody else from the board have any questions for the planner?
Just want to,
Jay, you want
So
to
the grade of this property
Okay.
goes from the rear,
put your mic on?
oh, sorry.
Yeah, grade of the property, I assume, is from the rear and slopes down towards the street, right?
Correct.
So any kind of your mitigation or sewer lines would have to go along that driveway. That's your only option, right?
I'm not an engineer, so I would defer to your engineer.
What about utility? To Vice Chair Fresky's point, what about electric? It's not underground at this point, I don't believe, on Grove Avenue. So are you going to have wires tension wires going into the back of that lot over one house to get to the next? How are you going to power? I'm sorry? What was your answer?
They can presumably pay KCG prior to the tender.
I mean, was there plans to go underground on that, or was there plans to go?
Madam Chair, there's no plans. Like, again.
There is a plan to put a single-family house in.
Well,
These are things that we need to think about, no?
Yes, but it's not part of, I mean,
I'm asking a question. If they can't answer it, please allow them not to answer it. If they choose not to.
We're not able to answer it, we're not required to answer it. We haven't designed the house, we haven't thought of any of those things. They have to be.
The house is going to face forward. I just want to know how electric is going to get to it.
I mean, conceivably, if we did propose a house in the future as a separate application that faced forward and the board didn't like that and said, can you please orient it a different way, that would be a conversation for that application. But again, I think what the burden of proof is for the applicant this evening is whether the subdivision works, not whether a hypothetical home.
Well, that is an argument against flag lots, sir. Just to let you know, it's about getting utilities past one house to the next, and the strange overhead wires or this is definitively one of the arguments against putting a flag lot or allowing for flag lots. Not only emergency access, but also utility. So you can tell me that you don't really think that it's of my concern to ask, but I'm asking because it is an eyesore to have those lines going all over the place.
We're not saying we're going to have those lines.
You're not telling me anything.
We don't have plans for the house, and you can't require them. It's inappropriate.
I don't have plans for the house. I know that.
That's right.
But you've told me you're going to face it this way and that you're going to either have a 10 or a 20-foot wide driveway, but you can't tell me how you're going to get electric to it. Thank you.
We haven't gotten to that point. We will if this application is approved. We're certainly going to do something. My client is in a position where he owns the entire property, and if we need easements or whatever to put lines underground to make it, to make it look correct and comply with whatever the township's requirements might be, we're going to do that.
I was asking about the
aesthetics. Deny this application because you're concerned there might be overhead electrical lines. It's total speculation.
It's based on the fact that I have no testimony on what your game plan is to even get electric there. You won't, I mean, the owner might want to answer this. You're not even giving me the opportunity.
We're not here asking your permission to build a particular house on the property.
Okay.
We're not required to do that in order to get subdivision approval. When it comes time to build the house, we have to comply with building codes, whatever requirements the township may have regarding utility locations and how they're handled.
I understand that. 5 minutes ago, you were bending over backwards to widen the driveway by 10 feet. But now you're screaming that we don't have to, we're not required. It's fine. I'm going to open this up to anybody else on the board.
Can I finish, please? I'm not questioning the driveway at this point. As I said before, we're willing to do whatever you want with respect to the driveway. And we're willing to be subject to review and approval of the fire department to ensure there's adequate access. And whatever they want, we'll provide, whether that's 20 feet wider or whatever.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions for the planner?
I just want to revisit my point about the private right-of-way and just be a bit pedantic, that I looked at the statute, and I don't think it requires a variance per se. We would just have to approve the right-of-way as part of the subdivision plan, and then that would provide street frontage. So this theoretically could be a as-of-right application if you did it that way, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think a private right-of-way, just as a matter of discussion apart from the applicant, requires a certain width.
Yeah.
And it also requires stormwater inlet structures, which are
It has to be approved.
stormwater inlet structures, which would
by the
let
governing
water,
body And establish the proposed access conforms with the standards of State Highway Access Management Code adopted by the Commissioner of Transportation. So
and that would actually undermine
have all of those.
the green infrastructure. To the
you
extent
could
that it
still
would
do-
simply pump water
you could
off-site
do-
into the municipal system.
But you could do the impervious paver system, stormwater storage underneath, under the current regs.
But they don't really hold water, those systems. They just sort of,
If you do the gravel system, it holds the water and then it recharges. So there are ways to do it.
right,
But I just,
there would have
I
to be
like that
soil
idea
testing.
better because it eliminates variances and it's better for emergency access. So that's just my 2 cents.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Okay.
Keep that to yourself.
Were there any other questions for the applicant's planner by the board, from the board? Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask if any members of the public have any questions for the planner. If you do, you come to that mic. Just give your name and your municipality. And again, the questions are specifically for the planner, based on the planner's testimony and any of the dialogue that you heard back and forth. Okay, seeing none, Mr. Tremulak, I would like to offer the public the ability to ask the applicant
Absolutely.
questions.
Sure.
So if he would come up to the table or.
Yeah, you can.
Mr. Lampkin, you're still on your oath.
Mr. Lampkin, really quickly, because your planner made a lot of comments about the large property next door, there was no discussion with the property owners on the other side to do any kind of merging of property from their site with your property at any time, right?
No, I mean, he gave me the idea when I was there with him. I've only met the gentleman 3 or 4 times. and
No,
that's
I'm talking about the property, if you're
about
facing your
about him
house.
buying mine.
No,
I
I was talking about a different property.
we're talking about the property, if you're facing your property to the right.
Okay.
Because your planner referred to that
I've
site.
never met that neighbor.
Okay, but there was never a thought of that,
No, no.
okay? And you only have plans, you said on the record that you plan only a single-family house, whereas the front house
The front house is a 2-family.
is a two-family.
But, yeah, I mean, I haven't done any plans. I just looked at what the guy did next door and I said, oh, that's all I looked at. And I just said, oh, maybe I could do the same thing.
It would be a one-family house. That's what the zoning currently requires.
Does anyone else from the board have any questions for Mr. Lampkin? Anyone from the public have any questions for the owner of the property, Mr. Lampkin? You have to come to do you have to come to the mic?
I understand. I don't, not necessarily questions from Mr. Lampkin, but I'd like to address the board.
Oh, that happens after. Okay. Thank you. If I remember to do it. I'm sorry about that, guys. All right, so at this time, no further questions from the board. Mr. Tremulak, you can give your closing wrap.
Can I wait until we hear from the public first so I can
Okay.
address whatever the public's concerns might be?
At this time, member of the public may come up and give your comment. Yeah, your statement. I haven't heard an application in so long, I'm all turned upside down.
It's all good. My voice carries out. Good evening to everybody. Let me just clarify.
State your name.
Mark Ann Selecki. I reside at 31 East Reed Place.
You can just say Verona.
The owner of 170, one of the owners of 170. So just to clarify a couple points before I give my statement. Mr. Lampkin and I had discussions about the dead trees. We had discussions about the, is it even on?
I don't know.
There's no little light. There's no light on. So we had discussions about the dead trees that fell, at least one of them fell partially and hit my garage, and those were taken down as the dead trees. Okay. And there's still a dead tree back there, but that'll get addressed at some point, I'm sure. I'm the owner of the adjoining property at 170 Grove and would like to submit my thoughts on issues that I believe the planning board should consider before approving this request for a subdivision, some of which have already been addressed, touched upon, so I ask your indulgence. My wife and I have owned the adjoining property since early 2000. It is a legally pre-existing, non-conforming property. And note that the rear yards of the properties from 184 Grove to the subject property, 176 Grove, and our property, 170 Grove, continuing through the rear yards of the properties on Linwood and Dodd, are essentially the only forested land and open space identified in this area of town, and that it also connects to the open space of the West Essex Rail Trail. I therefore feel that new development in this area warrants careful consideration. This includes, the area is zoned as a single-family residential, requiring a 60-foot frontage. The existing parcel already includes a non-conforming multifamily unit. If the property is to be subdivided, the new lot 90.01 should comply with current requirements and be converted back to a single-family unit. In fact, the front house on our property had to be converted back to a single-family upon my purchase in 2000. So it's inexplicable that a multifamily should be permitted to remain in circumstances upon subdivision of a lot, and no variance should be granted to allow that. Pre-existing, non-conforming, my understanding is that the burden of proof is on the applicant. The board in reviewing is essentially proving variances that are required for subdivision, which the applicant has asked for. We believe there is basis in case law that a subdivision is arguably a significant modification of pre-existing use and would require a variance to continue this. Secondly, the proposed subdivision with a request for a variance of 41% impermeable coverage on proposed lot 90.1 should also be carefully evaluated, especially considering the listed intents to add another single-family dwelling unit in the future on proposed lot 90.02. Given the town's stormwater requirements, I do not understand why a variance, presumably with no stormwater management requirements, would be approved for a new lot even at a 1% increase, when it is likely impermeable coverage could be reduced or the lots reconfigured to meet the existing requirements. For example, we sought to reduce impermeable coverage with our recent work to remain within the regulatory requirements and have effectively done that. As the board undoubtedly knows, the variance for 20-foot frontage on proposed lot 90.02 is intended for a new road cut or driveway onto Grove Avenue, which I believe, I'm not certain, is a county road, and in a location close to a school zone. I believe this would mean that an application must also be submitted to the county, and do not see any indication this was done. In general, the proposed subdivision should be configured to create two lots that comply with current regulations rather than seeking variances at this stage. Continuing, NGDEP's landscape project identifies a portion of proposed lot 90.02 as rank 3 state-threatened species-based habitat for the wood turtle, which has been listed as a threatened species by New Jersey since 1979. Based on this classification, we request that the board require that the applicant complete an assessment of the area in the spring when wood turtles are no longer hibernating. Finally, in furtherance of my original point that this area is the only forested land and open space identified in this section of town, that it also connects to open space of the West Essex Rail Trail, the Hilltop and beyond, I emphasize that maintaining this open space should be approached in a more holistic way that would be in keeping with the town's master plans and goals to promote the conservation of environmental resources and the natural appearance of the township, to improve neighborhood quality in existing residential areas without increasing housing density in those areas, and to preserve the environmental resources of the township by locating conservation parklands and easements where necessary, by limiting development in environmentally sensitive areas. The open space in the rear of these parcels also connects to a designated historic site in the town, 190 Grove Avenue, which I offer and proffer could be connected to other space through, for example, trail easements. This is consistent with the town's open space plan, which provides the township may consider preserving land that is already developed, depending on whether an entire property or portion of the property may be suitable for recreation or conservation. Expanding the definition of potential open space to include parcels which may have structures on them represents an opportunity for open space preservation, thereby maintaining this open space, which reduces flooding risk, maintains urban wildlife corridors, and more. We therefore request that the board consider this and seek input from the Environmental Commission before approval of the proposed plan, which expressly states the intent to develop a new single-family dwelling. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to make a comment or a statement? Seeing none, I'm going, oh, hold on.
Mr. Treviak, we have a jurisdictional problem.
Okay.
We're reducing the size, the subdivision would reduce the size of a lot with a non-conformity on it. Therefore, the subdivision would reduce the size of the lot with the two-family. The two-family is not permitted.
Right.
So the zoning board would have jurisdiction. That would be Raspberry, one of the few cases I know that.
I know the case, and I don't disagree with anything.
And that's something, I don't know why this was not
flagged.
You know, generally, Boswell, who does a great job, would pick this up. So.
Our zoning code official did, just now, apparently. Oh, you did?
I disagree.
Everything that we get goes right to the Board of Adjustments from now on.
But I didn't, quite honestly, I didn't know that two-family was not permitted.
Oh, you didn't know that?
I knew it was zoned, but, I knew, but, because it's not, we're exacerbating the non-conformity of the two-family, and we don't have the authority to do that. In effect, the zoning board would have to rubber stamp the two-family, if in fact, or they could, hear testimony about why the two-family is still, would still be proper with the subdivision.
Where does that put us tonight?
Motion to close.
Well, can I?
No, I'm just.
I'm like.
I would just ask if I could have 5 minutes or less just to talk to my client about this.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll take a break.
Yeah, thank you.
Feel free to talk on this.
I just thank you for the time. I just wanted to explore with my client the possibility of removing the nonconformity with the two-family, and, I mean, I think the decision is that they're not prepared to do that, in which case I agree to the Raspberry opinion that this then has to go before the zoning board. And in a way, I think it's maybe better for us in a number of ways, because I think we're going to probably revise this plan to draw the lot line across the back, provide a common driveway, one driveway, one curb cut that would be shared and would provide more than adequate emergency vehicle access to the rear lot, eliminate all the variances, really. So,
Mr. Chairman, I did want to put on the record, in fairness to Boswell, the original application submitted
it was a one-family.
was a one-family, and that's what Boswell had originally reviewed, so. Right, in fairness to them.
No, I understand.
Right. And then it was modified as Kathleen picked it up and.
Just ask the question, right.
Motion to adjourn?
So, excuse me, so, Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding you're going to withdraw the application?
I think we can
We have no jurisdiction.
withdraw it without prejudice.
Okay.
And then I'll talk to Kathleen about, do we have to file a new application, or can this just be transferred over?
With all the changes you're going to make and go in front of the Board of Adjustment, you're going to actually have to file a zoning permit to be denied, is that correct?
Yes.
So you're going to have to do everything you come in for a zoning permit.
Okay. All right, we'll do that.
Just for knowledge, where the agendas for Board of Adjustment are being filled in up to January, February at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. So moved. Everyone, have a good night.